What? Heavy snow. Additional snow accumulations between 3 to 6 inches, except 6 to 12.
I had spent that night in Albuquerque. I awoke well before sunrise to check the weather. I planned to drive Highway 60 across New Mexico to Payson, Arizona. After studying various weather sources, I decided to risk that, especially since it appeared I-40 would be hit pretty hard.
Continue on I-25 south for 53 miles.
In the book Blue Highways, William Least Moon describes his 2-month trip around the United States while living out of his van, ghost dancing. Although he never uses the word overlanding, his trip could serve as a model of what an overlanding adventure can be. Indeed, the Oxford English Dictionary describes the adjective overland as proceeding over or across land, also of a person traveling far and wide, and the verb as in extended use, to engage in overland travel as a way of touring remote areas, especially by motor vehicle. I also like Scott Brady and Matt Scott's 2-word definition that they occasionally mention on their podcasts, adventure travel. What's important here is that these 3 definitions all use a single root word, travel. Overlanding is travel in an adventurous way. It can be more than just driving, cooking, and camping. And it is certainly not just off-roading, as much fun as that can be. However, the overlander should be prepared for the difficulties of travel in remote areas, which can include off-road travel. That would certainly be part of an adventure, especially if one gets stuck or has a mechanical breakdown. However, what also makes a trip an adventure could include the sights one sees, the local foods one eats, the unique places one stays, the weather one experiences, and the interesting people one meets. And traveling off interstates, Blue Highways as it were, allows one to move beyond dodging truck traffic and the repetition of seemingly cloned gas stations, restaurants, campgrounds, and hotels. The ideal overlanding trip starts the moment you depart your driveway, not when you reach the trailhead in Moab, Colorado, or some other popular off-roading destination. That doesn't mean never travel on interstates. They are time savers for folks with limited vacation time, but you'll enhance your experience if you seek adventure by looking forward on a few secondary roads during one's travels. Anyways, it was time for another trip out to San Diego, Chula Vista to be specific, to visit with my mom. During my return to Oklahoma, I spent a few days with my longtime friend, Galen. We go back 70 years. He owns the Chula Vista home he grew up in, which is next door to my parents' home. Galen recently purchased a Jeep JK. Now living in Prescott Valley, Arizona, he has many trails on which to use it. So while this wasn't exactly an overlanding trip, that didn't mean I'd forfeit other elements of an overlanding adventure. There wasn't any camping planned, but due to a major winter storm forecast, I would be prepared to camp should the situation arise. And along with those Blue Highways, I'd explore some interesting Arizona off-highway trails. Although there was one trail in particular that was called the Highway, but it certainly was not.
This is Highway 60. I just left the town of Socorro, and it's just such a pretty drive. I said, let's go ahead and take it, despite the fact that they're saying that I'm going to run into some, how did they state to put it on their website, difficult driving situations. As you can see, there's been a bit of snow. More is expected, although I believe the further west that I get, the more I'm going to get out of this. But I will be getting up into higher elevations, so it's possible I could run into more snow, and this is a very lightly traveled road. I'm surprised that this road is clear. Headed out here toward the box. I stopped here on a previous trip, you may recall that. It's just right around this bend here. It's not very far off of Highway 60. I thought, well, let me come out here and see what this looks like with all the snow on it. Yeah, this is pretty. Weather forecast said it would be ice fog along Highway 60, and sure enough, there it is. Surrounded by mountains here, but you can't see them. They're a little too far away. Passing through the town of Magdalena.
As a kid, I thought that someday I'd grow up to be an astronomer. That, of course, never happened, but I'm always entranced by the sight of the very large array as I cross the plains of San Augustine.
Entering the town of Dato. It does have gas.
When I cross the Continental Divide on Highway 60, it's time for pie in Pie Town. And I enjoyed talking to a crew who were backpacking the Continental Divide Trail. Also, there's a windmill museum that is worth a stop.
So I stopped to take a picture here of these mountains that I was shooting video of. And they're so cool, and the light was just perfect. But by the time I got the Jeep in position and walked up the road, the shade came. This fellow was coming along the road, and my Jeep was parked right in the middle of it. So I said, "Can you get by?" He said, "No." He says, I want to talk to you. Are you a photographer?" And I explained I was just an amateur. And so he says, "Using a camera like that, you look like a professional." And I said, "Oh, I'm kind of crazy about it." And he said, "I'm a photographer." And I said, "Oh," I said, "You live in the area?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I've lived here all my life." And I said, "Oh, how nice." So we talked for a few minutes, and during the time we were talking, all of a sudden the sun come out, which was great, and I got to get a nicer picture than the one with everything was in the shade. Look at all them birds flying out in front of me. Move, birds, move. Move, boy. In the distance there should be Escudilla Mountain. I've seen it before, but I can't see it for the day.
I spent the night in Payson, Arizona. While there was nothing special about the motel I spent the night at, the next morning I enjoyed breakfast at the Pinion Cafe. I'm a regular there. Their Pinion burrito with chorizo sausage is outstanding. From Payson, I travel on 4-lane highways and interstates to Chula Vista. While awaiting my oldest daughter's arrival late Friday, I'd meet up with fellow adventurer Dan, whom you may remember from several trips with me the past couple years. We'd enjoy a great meal at the Galley restaurant at the Chula Vista Marina. Later, Dan would introduce me to Chris, one of the employees at Ursa Minor, the Chula Vista company that makes unique camper tops for Jeep JKs and JLs, Honda Elements, and Ford Transits and Broncos. It's on my bucket list to one day visit with the company at their shop, but this weekend was busy with family commitments. My oldest daughter and her family arrived later that evening. That weekend we visited my mom, as well as the Miramar VA cemetery where my dad and brother are interred. We'd also get some work done on my mom's home. On Monday, I departed Chula Vista, taking a favored back way that closely follows the U.S.-Mexican border for about 60 miles, before it dumped me on Interstate 8 as it passes through the boulder-filled Jacumba Mountains. Highway 94 crisscrosses the Impossible Railroad several times. These railroad tracks are used to bring new displays into the nearby Pacific Southwest Railway Museum. And a short distance down the highway is this Motor Transport Museum. Further down the highway, one passes under Campo Creek Viaduct, often called High Bridge, which was another section of the Impossible Railroad. Arriving in Jacumba Hot Springs, I stopped for breakfast at the hotel before driving the last few miles to merge onto Interstate 8 and descend through the Jacumba Mountains to Imperial Desert far below. It was later the same day I'd departed Chula Vista. I was stopped in Yuma for gas when I checked Google Maps for the best route to Galen's home in Prescott Valley. It offered me a great-looking route that only required 10 miles of interstate driving. And the best thing about it? I'd never driven any of these blue highways before. I was actually quite excited about that.
All these RVs. This is an area that's well known for a large gathering of RVs each year. Town of Yarnell.
I'd had a great drive from Chula Vista to Prescott, taking a few stretches of blue highways between sections of interstate. I spent Tuesday night at the Prescott Valley home of my friend Galen and his wife, Mary Jo. That morning we ate an excellent breakfast at Jen's 7th Avenue Cafe in Prescott, and now Galen and I were headed for a bit of off-roading adventure.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the area around Prescott, Arizona. We are headed up to the Mingus Mountain Trail. We have turned off on Mingus Mountain Trail. First time I've ever seen a traffic signal on a Jeep trail.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I'm following that hole.
On your map that this goes up to Mingus Mountain or the glider port or anything?
Looks like it goes across the top. What a view.
This is the Mingus Mountain Hang Glider launch point.
We are turning to the Vista view here on Mingus Mountain. RN 924, and there's another oncoming vehicle. Do you know the hand signals when passing vehicles?
Yeah.
Okay, a lot of places don't use them. I don't know if they use them around here or not. You hold up the number of fingers for the number of vehicles that are behind you in your party. And then if you're the last vehicle, you just hold up your fist. Two cows in the road. Actually, I guess he's a bull. Oh, definitely a bull. Need some spring water?
Look at that.
Even though these leaves are past their prime, they're still very pretty with these pale colors. Oh, I've got a little rough again.
I want to tip my hat to the guy that came out here and buried all these rocks in the road.
Ah. Alrighty, so my gas gauge says I have an eighth of a tank, which makes a lot more sense. It was that steep hill that was kind of throwing the gauge off. And we're only like a mile and a half from a gas station anyway. I was also carrying 3 gallons.
It had been a great drive around Mingus Mountain. We reached the town of Cottonwood, where we refueled. While gassing up, I met Michael, who inquired about the rack on my Gladiator. I told him it was a custom build by Travis of Element Outdoors and gave him his contact info. Although there are some interesting sights about mining to experience in this area, we had used up most of the daylight and decided to save them for a different trip.
two cows in the road. Actually, I guess he's a bull. Oh, definitely a bull.
Definitely a bull.
You saw that too, huh?